Okay. Welcome to Perspective TV. It is once again, my name is Kaide Bentley. I'm the president and founder of an organization called 4T, Teaching Teens to Think. The purpose of the organization is to help inner city youth identify their inherent skill sets so that way they can use their inherent skill sets to complete their education, higher education, which includes college, establish a career, and ultimately start a business if they choose to. I am also a professor at Fordham University, where I teach social justice through nonprofit structure management, where I have another cohort of students that I teach and prepare them to start their own nonprofit organization for the services of social justice. I also wear another hat where I sit on the advisory board of LIU, Long Island University. So it's all these skills that I bring together to the table to inform those who are supporters and listeners to try and educate and uplift basically the demographic that I deal with. This channel I use to share and bring on people in my network, people who I consider are influencers, professionals, and entrepreneurs. And needless to say, one of the greatest influencers, professionals, and entrepreneurs joining me in this Talk with Pop series is my pop. And it is my pop that has taught me all these years everything that I know, today, and set the foundation for me through the Lord, prayer as well. But my dad was a very integral and important piece that helped me balance, everything out, so that way I'm not too indoctrinated or brainwashed in regards to, the different ethnicities and racial disparities and all other stuff that's going on that we see all too well today. So without any further delay or further ado, it is my honor, it is my privilege, it is my joy to introduce my dad, my pop, in this Talk with Pop series, where we're going to talk about ancient Egypt and particularly the Nile River. The Nile River, which my dad will go into very detailedly. If you study your history, uh, Africa pretty much is the cradle of civilization. It's where all humanity, all life began. A key area in that area of Africa is the Nile River. And my dad is going to go over the Nile River, the temples along the Nile River, and various teachings, which I thought was very, again, as a refresher course, very, very inspirational, motivational, and all that good stuff. All right. So again, I know I said this before, but I'm going to say it again. Without any further delay or ado, it is my honor, privilege, and joy to welcome my dad, Baba Bentley. Pop, welcome to Perspective TV. Thank you for joining me today. I would like for you, not a long-winded explanation, just your name, right? And just your name. We'll just go with the name, and then because I know it's gonna be too difficult because you're retired, right? So say your name, you're retired, and share 2 points. Where you worked, where you're retired from, okay? Your name, where you retired from, and just what inspired you to study Egypt. Just one thing. What one thing or person inspired you to learn about Egypt? That's it. No long-winded. We're gonna get into the whole thing later, but this is a brief introduction. Name, where you're retired from, and who or what inspired you to learn about Egypt. Go. I gotta do it.
First, I am honored and proud to be with my son, and I'm awfully proud of him and his colleagues. My name is Adewale. That's my first name, Adewale. That's Adewhle. That's how you spell it. My last name is Akiliwa, Akilawa. I got the name at a naming ceremony from an organization called First World Alliance. And the key educators there was two legendary, I feel blessed, lucky, and fortunate. Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, better known as Dr. Ben, and along with him, or prior to Dr. Ben, was the one legendary Malcolm X, now known as Malcolm Shabazz. Um, and I was a member of his organization. He had two. One called the OAAU, which he designed it exactly after the OAU. OAU means Organization of African Unity, and the ones over here that he signed, designed after, called the OAAU, which is called the African American. Um, yeah, oh yeah, organization. Uh, I'm retired from 26 Federal Plaza. That's on Word Street and Broadway here in Manhattan, downtown. Just about a half a mile or 2 blocks up from the New York City Hall. Okay. What inspired me to study about Egypt is because of Malcolm, because out with his organization, the OAAU. He formed two of them. One's called the AA, again, like the AAU, that's the African American organization, after the one designed in Nigeria, and Muslim Mosque Incorporated. That was his religious organization. He said because of all of the brothers who didn't want to become involved with religion, especially religion of Islam at that time, and that's when he formed the organization called OAAU, the Organization of African American Unity, which I found we used to meet every Saturday uh, at the 2090 Teresa Hotel. That's down at 7th Avenue, now called Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard, and 125th Street. That whole intersection there is known, it used to be called African Square. Okay. But then they had a naming ceremony from a past leader, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, known as Dr. Ben. Now it's called Ben Yakinen Way. Okay, now, what inspired me to go to Egypt and study that was, like I said, like Malcolm. Because when Malcolm came back from Mecca, because he still claimed his religion of Islam, and he was a Muslim, but he traveled extensively on the continent called Africa. The original name for Africa is called Al Kabalan, all right, where he had conferences with some of the major leaders on the continent at that time. One was called Nasser, Gamal Abdul Nasser, UAE, and that was about in Egypt. The original name for Egypt is called Kemet. So from Kemet to Ghana to Nigeria to Tanzania and Khartoum. And there's an organization called the African American Organization of African Unity. And there was a couple of major conferences that was given in which he was the keynote speaker. That's Malcolm. Okay. And because of him, my main inspiration, before he left us or was taken from us, that's when I got hooked up with the one Dr. Yosef A.A. Ben Yakinen. Now, following behind Malcolm, my interest being on the motherland, the continent, Al Kabalan, my next leader after Malcolm was Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen. And it was Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen to take us to Kemet, better known as Egypt, every year. And that was, if I can find the right word, most exhilarating, because I had heard so much about Egypt when I was coming up. Not going through school, because I never heard about Egypt when I was going to school. I was born here in Harlem, and I was raised in both places, here in Harlem and in a place called Niles, Ohio. It's my grandparents, raised between my parents and my grandparents, which would be your great-grandparents. Now, both of them are expired, passed on. And so with Doc Ben uh, traveling to Kemet with him, he exposed this to what we call Kemet in that Nile River. Okay? The Nile River is 4,103 feet, 4,100 foot long. It's the longest river in the world.
Okay,
Next to
okay,
the oh,
okay,
okay. Go back to Egypt. Uh,
okay, okay, okay. All I ask you to do is do an introduction, Pop.
okay. All right, son.
Oh my goodness, you started to go right into the Nile River. All right. Oh, jeez. Okay. Okay. So, all right. I guess that. I mean, I should. Well, I wanted to make sure I made the clear distinction between your introduction and what we're actually going to talk about in the subject today. So, okay.
Okay.
So you just running into it. I can't. Hard for me to distinguish between.
No, I just forget about that. Then I just introduced myself. That's it. My name is Adewale.
Yeah, you already did it. Don't worry about it. You already did.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, son.
All right. So, okay. So those were your influencers, right? So we know where you retired from, and we know who influenced you. Yeah. Very powerful leaders. Okay. So, all right. So let me phrase it. Okay. So I guess I'm gonna phrase it this way, and I'm gonna try and phrase it in a way of listeners which I was surprised to realize didn't even know that much about Egypt, right? I'm not even sure if they knew that Egypt was the cradle of civilization. And that key word is so powerful, the cradle of civilization, meaning all civilization derived from Africa, the motherland, right? All of it. So with that said, Pop, I want to save the Nile River because I know you're going to get into it anyway at depth and in length, and I know you have your paperwork already. So, all right, let me bring up this, and then we'll go. I'll bring up this question, and then I'll follow that question up with the validity of Africa and the Nile River. Okay.
Okay, son.
All right. So, be what's the word I'm looking for? Be studious into how you answer this question. I got to switch it up a bit. Keep it interesting. And that might lead you right into the Nile River, but I'm asking anyway. So, with current events taking place today, why do you think? Well, let me ask this: how do you feel about what has happened over the past? I think month. It's been about a month or at least 3 weeks, where China has been. From what I understand, China and Africa are trade partners, right? China has a very big investment in Africa and has been working with Africa for quite some time. Is that fair enough to say? Okay.
Yes, son.
Okay. So, with that said, how do you feel about that partnership between China and Africa? Do you feel China is taking advantage of Africa?
I will say maybe to some extent, because China is taking over Africa, is replacing the United States in Africa. China is becoming the second largest economy in the world. Or I would go farther than that, say not only the second, but it's almost equal or in par with the United States. Africa haven't reached that point yet, although it will, say, in future times, in the future, not too far from the future. Because for the large part, a lot of the African countries, the countries in Africa, are developing. And a lot of them are developing with the help of China. Now, just like self-preservation, the first law of nature, every person, every country is going to look out for its own. So China, for the large part, is in the same way. Only is helping Africa and wants to replace the United States. And they're doing a lot of development and building up those poor parts of the continent of Africa, which they're doing. And well, I applaud that because Africa, the Africans, or our parent people over here, aren't at that level of development where they could do all that by themselves. So they will accept help almost from anyone, but who's at the doorstep right there to help them is China. Now, China is a big country because Malcolm also told us about the importance of us knowing our history and our culture. Because the more we know about ourselves, the better we can protect ourselves in terms of education and intelligence and also development. The thing to keep in mind about China is a big rift now between China and the United States, which was inevitable. The thing to keep about, like I say, to keep in mind about China is that foremost sticks out in my mind. Like in 1942, I think I should have looked it up. Anyway, I think Truman was the president. I'm not sure. Anyway, in 1942, China had a revolution. And Malcolm went into details about that revolution that the Chinese had. It was called the Boxer Rebellion. And that Boxer Rebellion against the United States because the United States had invaded and occupied China and made the Chinese slaves in their own country. And that brought about their liberator, really called Mao Zedong. So Mao Zedong took a band of Chinese, Peking, in and around that area, capital of China. And they went up into the mountains of China. And they formed not just an organization, but almost like a miniature army. Because they were determined to take back their country for themselves. That they were no longer going to be the slaves in their own country for a foreign country like the United States. So when they came back down from the mountains in an army, and they had a revolution, big revolution. One of the biggest rivers in China is called the Yangtze River, I think. I'm almost sure. Anyway, the biggest river in China at that time. And they say that revolution that they had was intense. Because Malcolm would tell us that the revolution, the Yangtze River, that large river say ran red with blood because of the revolution they were going through with Mao Zedong. And to me, that's to be admired because they took back their own history, their own culture, going back to their ancient times, and because the Chinese and Africa used to be great trading partners back in the day, back almost in the BC era, 1942, 18, 17, 16, yeah. I should say during the AD era. And he formed he organized his youth, and they were called the Red Guards. And he made up their own book called the Red Book. And just like the Christians and the Muslims have their own book called the Bible and called the Quran, he called his book just the Red Book, which is the Bible for the Chinese. And it contained all of the quotes and the quotations and the comments, and just went over their old ancient history. And they made a pledge and a vow that they were going to get even with the United States. So Mao Zedong formed his youth outfit called the Red Guards. The Red Guards then, what you know of, are the little Red Guards then are the big Red Guards now, the one that's running China. So with the Yangtze River and their revolution, so to expand themselves like they're doing now, they're also helping the other countries in and around their neighborhood. Like Korea, we hear a lot about the Koreas, North Korea, South Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, Japan, but mostly the other little countries surrounding them. So they're also building up their immediate neighbors. Plus the fact now they expanded into Africa, which is our continent, the motherland, and they are helping to build up Africa. There are some conflicts about that because they're worried about China taking over Africa. Okay, well that's a legitimate concern. That could be a concern, but nobody's going to do something for you for nothing. So while they are building up our continent, the motherland, uh, for like in the future, when our continent, when Africa can be in a position to take care of itself. So that's the process that you're going through now. Okay?
So do you think Africa, the continent of Africa, the inhabitants of Africa, um, will be in that position or have that leverage to, in essence, well, I don't want to assume that China is taking Africa, whereas the populace of Africa will have to take Africa back. But that's the premise of my question, and I'm asking you: do you think, in fact, China is doing all this stuff in Africa to make Africa China Part Two, whereas to a point they just remove all inhabitants who are of African descent, and then be able to claim Africa as the new China? Or do you think this is an agreement, whereas China has agreed to, build Africa technology-wise and things of that nature, and then after they've done all the building, then it'll be like, okay, you can have your continent back, Africa. We got you this far. Now you're gonna have to maintain and take it the rest of the way. I mean, which scenario are we talking about here?
I'm thinking that on a partnership basis. And the agreement is, as I understand it, that they are agreed, or Africa agreed, to let the Chinese help them, see, to build up their continent, to build up the continent of Africa.
Okay, hold on. My follow-up question to that, then, thank you, Pop, is then what is your take on China obviously bringing their people to Africa to build, but not offering jobs or positions to Africans who are on the continent, whereas they're doing the construction, the contracting work, and things of that nature, but they're not hiring any Africans to help them with that. What are your thoughts on that?
Now, this is what I'm hearing now, since we're focusing our attention on the motherland and the development of our motherland, the continent, and its relationship with China. Now, I don't know how much stock I would put in that they said that the Chinese building aren't hiring Africans. That may or may not be true. I don't know. I can't verify that. I'm not this, so I can't verify that.
Very good. Very good.
But on the continent itself, say like South Africa, Johannesburg, in the gold mines down there, Africa is the one country that has most of the natural resources that the world needs. Okay, and at one period of time, doing apartheid. That's when it was run by the Europeans, say like England, like France, and the Boers and the Hottentots. All these are European exploiters of that during the period of apartheid. Now, as Africa began, especially in South Africa, they began to get their power, start reorganizing themselves to take on these European explorers, racists. Now, South Africa and all of the mines in South are run by the Africans. those jobs that used to be owned by those the Boers and the Hottentots are the two most European explorers, racist explorers on the continent. So as Africa began to get its power, gaining this status, getting its power back, they kicked them out. So like I say now, gold is being mined in South Africa, Johannesburg, in South, by the Africans themselves, South Africans.
So
now they're running gold mines.
So it's the Africans that the Africans kick people out? What did you say?
Yeah. When you study say like one of our greatest leaders at the time was called Chaka. You heard of the Zulus, the mighty Zulus.
Right.
They were the most mightiest nations there in South Africa at the time. They took on, it was invaded by the Boers and the Hottentots from England. Okay. So they took them on. Now, how they launched them, the Europeans were the first one to get the weapons, say like guns and stuff, before the Africans did. So, but on a man-to-man basis, war to war, warrior to warrior, man-to-man basis, they couldn't stand up to the Zulus. Or yes, the Zulus and the other African warriors, things down there. So that's how they became dominated by the Europeans, especially those Boers and Hottentots from England and whatnot. So as they gained power, the ANC, the African National Congress, that's one of the biggest black organizations over there now. And that's with Nelson Mandela. Okay. And as they, like I said, as they gained the power, they took back their country. That's South Africa now. Okay. The only thing that they don't have complete control over is their economics. But their politics and their socials, this is all run by the South Africans. And the main leader of that time was Chaka. Chaka was the president and the chief of the mighty Zulus. They were the ones that took back the South African continent from the continent, took back South Africa for their people down in South Africa. And you notice those kind of revolutions are taking place over the continent now. But now they're coming into the Chinese are interested in getting rid of the Americans, okay, putting them out. So again,
hold on. Putting them out of where?
Putting them out of Africa.
The Chinese are trying to put who out of Africa?
The Americans, whites, Europeans.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to be clear. Go ahead.
No, that's quite all right, son. I'm happy for your question, and I'm happy that we're doing this because dealing with you, it's making me, reminding me, bringing back my memories. You know, when I was there, when I was studying back there, and what Malcolm was teaching us about Africa. So I'm proud of it. So that's the situation of our continent called the motherland, what they're going through now. And eventually, I can't put a time limit on it, but eventually Africa will be run by the Africans, the whole continent. I'm looking forward to that. I'm happy about that, and I'm proud of that. But this is a process that they're going through. Okay.
Why do you think Chinese have such a vested interest in helping Africa build? I'm not a pessimist. I consider myself an optimist and a half glass full type individual. But over the years, I've learned to ask key questions. You know what I mean? And I've learned over the years that people always have ulterior motives. And I've learned also where it said, this statement that says, plan your life, because if you don't plan your life, somebody else will plan it for you. So saying that in all that context, why is China so willing to help Africa build and go so far to the extent of kicking the Americans out, who are white people, out of Africa? What do they hope to gain? China, what do they hope to gain by doing that?
Well, their objective is to maintain their position in what they call the world economy now. Okay. So they're looking out for their interests too. But they're also being in mind about who their enemies are. And their enemies primarily is the United States and also England. That's over there in Europe.
Okay.
because at the same time America was invading China and capturing the Chinese and making them slaves in their country, Britain had also invaded India, which is a subcontinent of Asia. And they did the same thing with the British did the same thing with the Indians, East Indians out of continent. And the British ruled India something like 100 years. Okay. Now, and to show you the you know, see now when China, Russia, and the key person there like Nikita Khrushchev, okay,
Mm.
when they were called communist countries, both of them are communist countries. Uh, yeah, China and Russia, both of the two communist countries. But to show you how your racism plays into this, when China was looking toward Russia to help rebuild itself, to reconstitute itself, and the leader at that time was this guy called Nikita Khrushchev, and you also had Mao Zedong who was bringing up rebuilding China. So Mao Zedong had asked Nikita Khrushchev for some help to help him build his country, and Nikita Khrushchev wasn't for that. He was out for having dominating China and having China subjective to Russia. And Mao Zedong didn't see it that way. So he's going to build up his own country for his own people. So when he went in industrial development stage, building his weapons and his army and equipping his army, he was depending on Russia, Nikita Khrushchev. And Nikita Khrushchev wasn't going to do that. He would help him on some maybe minor things that didn't account too much for China and Mao Zedong. So Mao Zedong had to cut loose Nikita Khrushchev. So these two communist countries, two communist empires, are at odds with each other because each one have their own interests about their own country and their own people. So right now you have this standoff between the Russians and the Chinese. But at the same time, Chinese are objected to become also like a world power, where they're not going to be dominated by these other European powers. So this is what has Europe, and particularly the United States, at odds or worrisome about each other, about their future. Because right now, China and the United States are skirmishing. You know, like we played football, we had skirmish games.
Yeah,
That's what they're doing now in the nuclear phase, because just like the United States have satellites up there in the universe, okay, they just sent one off a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, to a station up there. They sent a satellite up there. Well, you see, China also has some satellites up there in the universe. Okay, and like right now, these two powers are skirmishing against each other because these laser beams, high-powered laser beams, laser lights, they are firing at each other's satellites circling the globe. Now, this is happening now between the United States and China. Okay, what the United States is worried about that in the future, as China grows in power, is going to put this country's power at risk. It's already at risk, putting it at risk. Here again, who's going to rule the world and going to run their own country, be standing for themselves? Now, this is the situation you have now with the Chinese and the United States.
Okay.
Because you hear Trump talking about now he's going to he's talking about China and its human rights violations because they're not treating people right. This is the rap or the complaint that this Donald Trump has against Xi Jinping. That Xi Jinping is the president of China, and those he's accused Xi Jinping. And Xi Jinping telling Trump, so you better clean up your own backyard because you ain't doing too much for the African Americans over there in your country. So how you going to talk about me and mine? This is what Reverend Al did a wonderful point on that when he did the eulogy for Edward Lloyd.
Edward Lloyd or George Floyd?
I'm sorry?
Edward Lloyd or George Floyd?
You're right, so George Lloyd, yeah. So, and Reverend Al did excellent point on his eulogy for George Lord. And he laid it right on the line in depth and detail about this Trump and this Republican Ku Klux Klan Tea Party. So that was it. But coming back to us in our homeland, the continent, this is also undergoing a development period, because at one period of time, Africa wasn't as developed as the rest of the countries or the rest of Europe or the rest of China. So Africa now is in the process of rebuilding itself. Okay, and all those those countries or those countries that's willing to help it, that's who they're looking to, or that's who they're accepting the help from. Okay, so the United States was over there exploiting Africa, couldn't help Africa that much, because like I said, you go down to South Africa, talking about apartheid. Okay, and apartheid, they had our people in slaves over there in South Africa, not only in South Africa, but also Ghana and also Nigeria and also the Congo. Okay, with Patrice Lumumba in the Congo. Okay, so United States has been exploiting the continent for a good amount of time now. But now Africa is also rebuilding itself along with China, and it's accepting the help from China to help build this, to bring itself back up there. That's the continent of Africa now. Now, maybe not all the African states are at that level where they can accept it, where they can accept or will accept help from the outside, but they're leaning toward that way. And like the sister said too, that one of our National Action Network rallies about
last year, I remember.
Yeah, last year. I mean, when Africa is calling for her children to come home, going back to like the mighty Marcus Garvey said too, back to Africa. That's our land, that's our continent, and we wanted to build up, so let's go back there and help build it up. So that's the theme as of right now. Okay, so that's primarily between those two: China, United States, and Africa, the continent of Africa.
Okay, all right. Okay, so thank you, Pop, for that insight as it relates to China's vested interest in Africa and possible ulterior motives. So I want to make sure I'm clear with this. So the reason why China is investing their resources into Africa and building it up is because they feel their bigger enemy, not to say that Africa is their enemy at all, because I'm gonna do another follow-up question to that, but they feel their ultimate, I'll use that word, they feel that their ultimate enemy is Europe and the United States, because of what took place in history with the United States, and I guess to some extent in part, Europe attacking China, right? And they had to take back their land. So that's why they're willing to invest so much in Africa based on what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Okay, so then my third follow-up question to that is, why is there a stereotype or rumor that Chinese is racist against Africans or Black people? Why do they treat Black people, especially here in the United States, why are they racist against Black people, or the perceived, perception is that they're racist against Black people? For example, in China a few weeks ago, around this whole thing and causing a challenge with the negotiation in Africa, the news, and we know there's fake news and real news, but the news reported that Chinese were actually kicking Africans out of their residences and hotels because they were blaming Blacks or Africans for the cause of COVID-19. And this is in China. So it's confusing to me as to, okay, good, China's in Africa doing all this stuff because their biggest enemy is the United States and in part, Europe. But then why are they treating Africans in China that way? And why do they treat Blacks in general in the United States, like the plague, or the stereotype is that they're racist against Blacks? Can you help clarify that? Or yeah, can you help clarify that? Was that, was that question clear, or did I answer? Did I ask the question correctly, or was it confusing?
Very good, son. We have a lot of what you call fake news.
Okay.
And I would question the sources that's claiming that the Chinese don't like the Africans or don't like the blacks. I'm not going to say it's not happening, but I have to find out who's saying that and why.
Okay.
Because if that be the case, both China and Africa main adversary or enemy is Europeans and the United States. Yeah. You have to be careful about the source of news that's coming from and about the ones who they're targeting too, like China and Africa. Like the press over here, how they treat us. Mm-hmm. They never talk the truth about us and about our achievements and whatnot.
True. Good point.
Now, like right now, after all these years, 99 years, they're just coming out with Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Juneteenth. Right. Okay. Now, when I was coming up going to school, I never heard anything about no Juneteenth. Didn't know what the hell Juneteenth was.
Right. Me neither.
Juneteenth or June 18th or June 19th. I don't know none of that shit. Just finding this out just recently, and I heard about that from Malcolm. Before he passed away, just like when I was growing up, I didn't know nothing about the. Well, at that time we went as a people. We came through 3 stages. We came from colored people to Negroes to Afro Americans. Now to our accurate definition as African Americans. Mm-hmm. We were colored people because of the 246 years of chattel slavery, mm-hmm. and how our women, such as our great-great-grandparents, our mothers and great-great-grand-aunts and whatnot, mm-hmm. how they were also taken advantage of, mm-hmm. how they were raped and sodomized. So we come up with a race within our race called the mulattoes. These are the ones who are the children of our parents who were raped by the Europeans, Ku Klux Klans and slavery. Okay? But now we're more or less coming together now since they know who they are, finding out who they are, and they also coming more or less into the fold of the Black Africans, being African Americans. Now, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
60 Minutes did a whole thing on Tulsa, Oklahoma this evening, just before we came on. Okay. And like I said, when I was coming, I didn't know nothing about no damn Oklahoma. I was curious about this Billy Sims, because Billy Sims was playing for the Sooners, Oklahoma Sooners. Okay. He's a hell of a running back for them at Oklahoma. That's when I was coming through school. Okay. High school at that time. So, and like I say, when I was coming up, knowing at that time our identification was colored people. Okay, mm-hmm. And coming through our history class at that time, when they talk about history of America and history of Africa, say that we didn't have is it known as the Dark Continent. Mm-hmm. And we were known as savages and barbarians and had no education, no culture, nothing. Okay, and then it would be sarcastic. The question would be sarcastically asked, like, "What contribution did the colored people make?" And at that time, I couldn't answer because I didn't know myself. All right then. Since we were colored people and had no culture and had no history, like what contribution did we make? Had I known then what I know now, see, I could have lit their ass up with that shit, but I couldn't do it. It wasn't until after I left school, graduated from school, went through the military, Army, and then went to college and then came back, and then meeting up with Malcolm when to get a full dose of our ancient history and culture. And behind Malcolm, come up with Doc Ben, who took us to our ancient history and culture. I said, well, I've been down. I said, how come I didn't know this then? But I remember when Doc, when we went to Africa, went down to we went to when we went to the Temple of Philae.
You going into the Nile River? You going into the Nile River now?
I ain't going away. No, I'm sorry. I'm still away from that, son.
No. I just need to know because then I can prep it. So I just want to know when you go into the Nile River, then we can segue right into that.
No, well, I want to go. I want to follow your program. What you want to do?
I'm gonna flow with you. Continue with that. I just need to know if you were going to refer to some material related to the Nile River in Africa.
Oh, all right.
Don't lose your train of thought. Continue with your train of thought. I'm a flow with you.
Okay, son. My son. Okay, with Doc, yeah. After Malcolm, I wasn't going to hook up with nobody, and I was just looking for some kind of organization. Because Malcolm also said we should be join an organization and be organized and know about the organization that you're with. And I found out about Dr. Ben because at that time we had this Gil Noble in Like It Is. And Gil Noble had seen, Estelle had seen Doc on this Gil Noble program. And she told me about it and said that I might be interested in this guy called Dr. Ben. So I met Gil and I went there, and that's when I met Doc. So it wasn't no time at all before I followed him with Doc because he was just leading me or teaching me about not only my contemporary history here in the United States, but also our ancient history and culture. So that brings in the continent of Africa, and that also brings in Egypt because he was a specialist on Egypt. Doc has spent 54 years of his life studying the continent of Africa, okay, and focusing on Northeast Africa being Kemet, being Egypt, Kemet being the original name for Egypt, okay. So following Doc's, joining his organization and studying with him became very exhilarating, exciting, and stuff that I had never known before. Like I say, I laughed my ass off when Doc was telling us about the continent where we come from as a people. And then I'm thinking back when I was coming through school, how I had never heard about this. Pyramids, what the hell is a pyramid? And where is that? Now, what's this story on the pyramids and shit? So Doc told us what the pyramids was. Not only told us what the pyramids were, but took us to the pyramids. You know? And then took us to Kemet, and then took us on the Nile River. And that's where we really got our education. And it was real excitement with that.
Just put a pin there. Just put a pin there. Question. Well, I can phrase this a couple of ways. Why, for those of, I'll say particularly African American or Black descent, who feel that I don't know if I could say they feel history isn't important or their culture isn't important, but they don't feel an urge to research about their lineage. Now, I'm not saying this is a conscious effort, so to speak. I would say it's a haphazard one where, they have Blacks in this country growing up in the Western civilization, indoctrination or teachings, are tired for the most part and really don't know where to start in regards to finding out about their lineage and their culture. And to a large extent, might find it too time consuming, too energy draining, really don't see the use or necessity of it, really don't see why it's important. So I guess my question to you, Pop, is for those who view it that way or feel that, You know, they have too many other things going on in their life. They ain't got time to look for their lineage and stuff. Why is it important that somebody know about their culture, particularly African Americans? Why is it important for them to do that research, or to at least start somewhere and finding out where they came from, where their ancestors came from? Because growing up in society, without thanks to you, but those who I know, they trace their recollection of tracing back their lineage just goes back to being slaves, and that's it. Why is it important that everyone should know their lineage and their culture? Why is that? Why do you think that's important, Pop?
Because that's their survival at the present now and into the future. Because as you know now, with these demonstrations nationwide, Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the youth, the young ones now, are becoming aware of their history and their culture. Now, keep in mind, we came through 246 years of chattel slavery. Okay, that was intense. Okay, now again, I'm not saying 246 days or 246 weeks or 246 months. I'm talking about 246 years. Now, what was life like? What were we going through during that chattel slavery period? Now it's been said, it's been stated that there's not only for the past 401 years. This is what little Reverend Al is bringing about now. But I want to deal with the first half of the 400 years, 246 years. Well, if your history was taken from you, first when you brought here, 1619, okay, when you were brainwashed, indoctrinated, and then taught to hate each other, and you go through 246 years of that, what do you have to pass down to your children? What can you teach them? If the parents don't know, how the hell are the kids going to know? Okay? And if you don't have no interest in finding out who you are, ethnically and racially, then what do you expect of your kids? And that's been passed down for the past 246 years. That's why, even at this date and time, you go to Willie Lynch. In my bag of tricks here, I got you how you can control your black slaves. See? And if you don't know your history, then you're doomed to report it. If you don't know where you come from, then you don't know where you are now, and you can't plot your future because you have no future. If you don't have no history, you have no future. And one of the turmoil that's causing this country now, why America is in crisis right now, is because African history is being more exposed. More and more people are finding out about the history, okay? Especially the younger youth, like you and your generation and younger. Which one of the reasons I'm very optimistic. I'm happy, and I'm looking forward to, because I see how well y'all coming along now, and the interest that you have, because you also recognize your survival. Now, when you go to school, yeah, why is this important? And knowing about this Willie Lynch, which is also part of that chattel slavery, as we're raising our kids, when they go to school, see, K through 12, that's elementary school, on up to high school. Those who are in multiracial neighborhoods or communities, they're not going to get the full dose or the full knowledge of the history. It's going to be convoluted, mixed with other. Because again, they say why, like it was first said, why Black Lives Matter, and now you're finding out why Black Lives Matter, and that's the same attitude that you're going to run into going through school, but more especially those who go into college. Because they're not going to take the time to teach them about that, because they don't want no competition. And they really don't want no competition from the Africans. Now, keep in mind now, during this chattel slavery, we weren't even allowed to read. It was against the law for a black man to read. Now, I'm not talking about getting a partial education, any education at all, but learning how to read. If you can't read, you can't do your 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. If you can't read, you can't calculate. If you can't calculate, you can't plot the future. Okay, that's just reading. Okay, but then you're dealing with reading. You got to do with mathematics. You got to deal with science. You got to deal with history. You got to deal with science. Okay, and the reason it was against the law for a black man to read because they couldn't afford to let him know about his past. Mm-hmm. They knew where you come from. They knew the continent that you come from and what you did and what you achieved. See, after all, you don't find there are no pyramids in Europe. Number one, there are no pyramids here in North or South America. That's number two. And there are no pyramids in the Far East or the so-called Middle East. You only find those pyramids on the continent from which you came. Now, how was those pyramids built? Who built them? Now, even now today, they want to recognize the fact or part of the fact that it's built on the continent, and who built it? Wasn't about black people on that continent. And at the time it was built, the saying is that all the world fears time, but time fears the pyramids. Okay? Now, when Khufu built that pyramid of his, the Great Pyramid in the town of Giza, and he built his. But Zoser, the brother pharaoh that built the step pyramid in Saqqara, Zoser built the step pyramid before Khufu built the Great Pyramid. But the knowledge it took to put these architectural landmarks together, and if you notice, you don't find them no place else but on that continent. Now that's in Kemet. Now, when you deal with your homeland, that's Northeast Africa. Now in Southwest Africa, Ethiopia. Okay, you got another monumental landmark. There's I think it's an 8-story church. Okay, that's built underground. It's Ethiopia. Okay,
I know that.
Deep down in there. Now, that was built after Khufu and Zoser built the pyramids, but that's also on the continent from which you come from. Okay, and every year this black church in Ethiopia, they have what they call a pilgrimage. When the brothers and sisters on the continent would come from around the neighborhood in and around Ethiopia, and they would have this pilgrimage going to this church in Ethiopia. Remember, now think about a 6-story building, 6-story church built in the ground. Now, not on top of the ground, but underneath the ground.
6 stories or 8 stories underground?
It's either 6 or 8. I have to check my figures on that.
Okay.
It's 6 or 8 story. But anyway, it's underground. So what we did above ground, also what you did below ground. Okay. You don't find that church nowhere in Europe. It's like you don't find the pyramids nowhere in Europe. Now, what kind of people are these architects, engineers, and builders that could build these kind of landmarks? Because you don't find that no place else. Like I said, you don't find it in Europe. You won't find it in Asia, which is known as the Far East. You don't find it in the Middle East, but you only find it in the Near East. And that's the continent of Africa from which we came from. So you can see why during chattel slavery, why they want to keep us ignorant and brainwashed, indoctrinated, and then introduce their history and culture and eliminate our own. Because that way we don't know what we're doing or where we're going, or we don't have no identity. See, well, now you got an ethnic identity and you got a racial identity. See, and this is the crisis that this America is in now. Like if you notice the protests, it's not only here in New York or Los Angeles or DC, but nationwide. See?
Worldwide.
Worldwide, yeah, worldwide. And that was ticked off by this white cop, racist cop, with his knee on Floyd's neck. Now here he's being murdered in broad daylight, and it's on film. See, that went worldwide. See, so now it's waking up to everybody. Just like Reverend, oh shit. Hey son, Oh, wait a minute. Damn it.
I'm still here, Pop. I'm still here. You can hear me.
Okay.
All right, Pop. The screen that you, oh man, what you do? Did you touch the computer again?
Yeah, my little pad here. Now, how can I get you back up here?
All right, we're not gonna spend an hour on this, Pop. We ain't doing that this time. We ain't having it. What do you see on your screen right now, Pop?
Right now, I just see me. I got my picture on it, my name on it. It says, let's check your camera and mic.
All right, I got you. All right, do you see where your name is?
Yes, son.
All right, put the cursor where your name is after the H. Let me know if the cursor blinks.
Oh, shit.
Relax, calm down. Is it in? All right, at the bottom of that, does it say enter the studio? Scroll down the screen. Take your time. No stress.
Okay, son.
Remember, you was at that page before.
Yes, son. All right.
Does it say enter the studio?
Yes, son.
All right, click into the studio.
I just did.
All right, hold on. You back?
Yes, son. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Can you stay away from the computer, please? Can you keep your back away from the computer, please?
Yes, son. I'm staying away from the computer.
I mean,
I'm at the table. But
yeah, just don't have anything touch your computer. That's all. And then we won't have that anymore. We've been through that last time. Let's not go through that again. Thank God we got this less than 30, 45 minutes like last time. All right, continue. You were talking about Chauvin or whatever that cop name with his knee on his neck, and now that ticked off or sparked a worldwide protest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, son. And not only nationwide, this can be worldwide. Mm-hmm. And they want to defund the police departments throughout the country. Mm-hmm. Okay. They want to make it more difficult or harder because these police departments taking in anybody, practically. Mm-hmm. Wasn't giving in any
anybody. They were taking in anybody or just certain body?
Taking in practically anybody, but particularly the Ku Klux Klan. See, because most of these rogue cops that you see now that are being brought up on charges,
right?
That's one of the ways the Ku Klux Klan infiltrated the police departments nationwide.
Did you also hear about? I'm sorry, Bob. Didn't mean to interrupt. But did you also hear about the recent killing outside of a Wendy's fast food thing? I think it was the day before yesterday. A cop killed an innocent black person in a Wendy's drive-through.
Yeah, he was asleep in his car.
That's what it was. He was
blocking the drive-through at Wendy's.
Okay. Because he fell asleep.
Yeah, it is reported that he was going through a drive-through in Wendy's and he fell asleep in his car.
Wow.
Okay. And they wanted to wake him up, or they come to wake him up, or whatever, however it went down. Anyway, he got shot. Okay. Now, my thing with him is I can almost understand why he would have gone to sleep at Wendy's, when they drive in. But if he knew he was that tired, why did he stop there? There's something now we got to exercise some common sense. You know what I'm saying? Right. And you're gonna be in a drive-in through window, knowing that's a eating place. Why the hell you gonna fall asleep in the drive-in window here and shit? And especially at today's rate,
right? It could have been, what it could have, again, the report didn't come out, so I mean, we really can't comment until we have the facts, wherever those facts come from. But I've recently heard about over the past couple of years about narcolepsy. So narcolepsy is a condition where people fall asleep uncontrollably.
Oh.
I mean, but then again, at the same time, if he was diagnosed with that, he shouldn't be driving a car because that's dangerous. So, but I just threw that out there because, I mean, there could be a variety or various reasons why he would do that because, like you said, it didn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in this climate and what's going on today, he should have used better judgment. Then again, we don't know. All right. So with that said, I want to ask you another question. Have you heard recently, I think over the past few days, Candace Olsen and her comments about George Floyd, whereas she said we shouldn't make him a martyr, and someone was like, hey, nobody claimed he was a martyr. He was just killed, unmercifully, so to speak. But Candace Olsen, have you heard of Candace Olsen and her comments on that? What are your thoughts on that?
No, bring me up on this Candace Olsen.
You never heard of Candace Olsen, Pop? She's a black conservative. You heard of her before? She's a black female conservative, and, saying that to an extent, she doesn't. I don't want to mischaracterize her or put words in her mouth, but she was downplaying George Floyd's death, as if he shouldn't be mourned over, so to speak, because he wasn't an ideal citizen. It's kind of what she was alluding to. Like how the news paint black as thugs and criminals, and other cultures in particular. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. White people as troubled or, hard, growing up, but blacks are automatically assumed as thugs. And that's what she was saying, and people took offense towards that. But if you ever heard of, forget it. I don't want you commenting on anything you haven't, at least been aware of. So listen, we're closing in on the top of the hour. You did a great job. We can extend it another 15, 30 minutes if you would like, but I think you speaking about the Nile River, we could do part 1 of the Nile River and continue with part 2 of the Nile. If, in the next discussion that we do, is up to you. You want to talk the next 30 minutes about the Nile River and why the Nile River is so important, especially to culture, heritage, and African American?
Yeah, I'll touch on it a little bit, son. But I want to go back to this little concern. What's her name now?
Oh, Candace Olsen.
Yeah. One thing that that concerns me, not to no great extent, I don't see how she's a conservative. That means she's a Republican.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and show you a picture of her.
Okay. One thing that concerns me is about I don't see how any black person can be a Republican in this day and time. And then to classify themselves as conservative Republicans. Right?
I might have her name wrong. I'm sorry. It's not Candace Olsen. It's Candace something. I forgot her name. Okay. All right, but go ahead, Pop.
How any so-called black person in these days and time can call themselves Republicans.
Right. Candace Owens.
Candace Owens. Okay.
How they could call themselves a Republican? Okay.
Yeah, black Republicans. I just don't see it. Either that they don't know nothing about themselves or their history, or the history of that party that they claim they belong to. The Ku Klux Klan now, especially under Donald Trump, which has always been, but he's really brought it out. This Ku Klux Klan, this Republican Ku Klux Klan Tea Party. Okay. How they are anti-black, racist, and like Donald Trump's base support, foundation is the Ku Klux Klan. It was the Ku Klux Klan that endorsed him to be president of the United States, Donald Trump. And when you look at this Juneteenth, Tulsa, Oklahoma, hey, son, what happened? Friday? Hey, son.
I'm sorry, Pop. I was trying to get. I was trying to. I was trying to get the thing. I was trying to get the screen up for you for Candace Owens, and I got us. I disconnected it. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay, I'm back, Pop. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. Good job. Perfect. Perfect. Hold on. I think I have it now. Hold on. I think I have it now. Don't lose your train of thought, Pop. I think I have it. Here we go. Okay, hold on. All right. Hold on, Pop. You see, last I remember, I had to do it this way. So now you should have the permission in there, application window, share. Let's go. All right, there you go. See, that's Candace Owens. Does she look familiar?
I've seen her on a couple of news clips. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. George campaign after George Floyd. Yeah, I see over here. Got it. Yeah, she's a conservative and a conservative Republican. And to me, it's not only ludicrous, but it's a stupid and dumbass, how any so-called black person can classify themselves as a Republican conservative. But to be a Republican in the first place and then classify themselves as a conservative.
I'm a push back on that, Pop. Based on history.
Okay.
And I think you heard this before. It was the Republicans that pretty much, I mean, they're both two sides of the same coin, right? Two different wings on the same bird. We already know about the political parties. Well, I know this. You still struggling with that one, but it's a political party that the agenda is still the same. They're just different colors. So the point I'm making is history says that it was the Republicans that really fought for blacks and civil rights back in the day. It was the Democrats who were kind of like the Republicans today. So, and conservative values is something that, from what I heard based on history, is something that a lot of blacks adhere to in regards to conservative as far as religion, you know what I mean, and morality and stuff like that, which is the essence of conservatism. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is, that's the angle that she comes from with regards to, her viewpoint or perspective or her lens. So that's why I push back on that statement, Pop, in regards to the term conservative in its purest form. It's about morality. It's about integrity. It's about character. So her being that is tainted now, but to that point is what I'm saying in defense of conservatism in its purest form. But go ahead, as you were saying. I'm sorry. I just back on it.
What you said is true. In the early days, back in the day, Whig Party formed part of the Republican Party.
Right. The red coats or the red part, something like that. I remember it was.
Yes, son.
Right.
Now, it is true that our forefathers, foreparents, were Republicans. Big time. They loved that Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
They worshiped that Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
They gave up their blood, sweat, and tears for that Republican Party.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They even gave up their lives for that Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much they were loyal to the Republic. Up until that Hayes-Tilden compromise.
Right. We talked about that.
Where that same Republican Party that they were loyal to would give up their lives for, sold them out.
Right.
And that Republican Party been selling out blacks ever since. You can go back to little Jackie Robinson.
Yeah.
The lead, our idol for baseball. He was a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
Then he left the party. You had another Republican up there in Boston, Brooks. He was a Republican.
Mm.
And he left the party.
Mm.
He led I forgot the other ones. Oh yeah, Colin Powell, General Colin Powell.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He was a Republican.
Right.
And now he's voting for Biden.
Right.
He left the party. Okay?
Right.
So it's that history of the Republican Party. Like we were comparing the two parties. You're right. Maybe like George Coley Wallace was saying, there's not a dime's bit of difference between the two parties. Okay. Now, that might be true. It is true to a certain extent. But the basic philosophy between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Republican Party now, this Republican Ku Klux Klan Tea Party, see, their philosophy is white supremacy. And they deeply involve, adhere, and live by that. This Republican Party today. If you have any doubts about that, look at Donald Trump. Okay. Here, he's going to call the Central Park Five. Okay. Acquitted of the crimes that they did. And he has now that's what, 10, 15 years ago? And he has yet to apologize for that. In fact, he took out ads in the newspaper calling them barbarian savages and that they should be executed. Okay, young kids at that time. Okay, Corey Wise, he's one of the main ones that comes out of National Action Work every Saturday. That's one of the Central Park Five. Now, his attitude toward blacks, African Americans. Colin Kaepernick, quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers.
Right.
Called him a son of a bitch. Okay. Now,
you mean Trump called Colin Kaepernick a son of a bitch?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yes, he did. Okay. Now, the NFL, National Football League,
which has recently apologized for their stance on the taking knee thing. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yes, I did. All of the 32 owners didn't do that, but the one chief of the NFL did that. Okay. Now, their attitude is, now here that's 32 teams in the NFL, 32 teams. Okay.
Right.
You got the NFC, the National Football Conference, and the AFC, the American Football Conference, two different conferences. Each one has 16 teams apiece.
Okay.
And each team has 33 members. Okay, you got offense 11, got defense 11, you got special teams 11. That's 33. Now, so we're talking about damn near 2,000 NFL football players. And I'm not talking about the coaches. I'm not talking about the managers. You're not talking about the owners. But you got something like 2,000 NFL players in the NFL.
Okay.
And Donald Trump calls them sons of bitches. Not as a collective group, as one, calling all of them a son of a bitch. But he said all of them, they are sons of bitches.
Okay, so the teams, though, that consist of the 33 players, they have black, white, other ethnicities. So isn't that a general statement he's making? I'm just being a devil's advocate, Father.
That's quite all right, son. Yeah, I should have clarified that. Let me clarify that. Say out of the, I don't have the exact figures in front of me after I calculated it out. But anyway, let's say about 2,000 NFL players, right?
Mm,
87% are black.
okay.
That's most of them.
Okay.
Okay. Now, of those 80% black NFL players, then Trump calls them sons of bitches. Not all of them collectively as a son of a bitch, like he did with Colin Kaepernick, but each one of them individually as sons of bitches. That means that if they are the sons, that means their mothers and their wives are bitches. Okay. And the bitch is a four-legged female dog in heat. So that's what he thinks about the black woman. Okay. That's Donald Trump. Now that's what he's about NFL players. Okay.
Okay.
And now what
Mhm.
he's talking about, he's done more for blacks and African Americans than any other president. First of all, the profile on this Donald Trump, he's a peroxide.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Well, I went over that before. Okay, I won't go over that again, son.
All right. So now,
But that,
I think for the most part, now I don't think it was. I don't think this was widely accepted. I think is the best way I can put it. Uh, at the beginning of this year or last year, but I think now, in light of current events that have taken place, I think more people are becoming acutely aware of the type of person Trump is. I think the message is gotten out in regards to his character and the way he is. Um, so I think it's pretty clear. Everybody know he's not playing with a full deck. One, part of it also includes the fact of you know the apple don't fall too far from the tree, right? So we look like you said, or like it's been said, his parents, mother and father, part of the clan, that whole thing. So it was their training and indoctrination that you know is a result of what Trump is or what. You know what I mean? So I think that's more known now, or more accepted or understood now than it was before. But we don't want to give attention unless necessary to that. We want to bring it back to our culture. My initial question was, why is it important to know your culture, your history? And you answered that question very well, Pop. It's imperative to our survival or any person's survival. If you ask Italians, you ask Jews, you ask Greeks, about their culture and their heritage, they're proud that they know their culture and their heritage, and they, promote it from the mountaintops and stuff like that because they realize the importance of knowing your origin. Whereas we as African Americans have been stripped of that, like you alluded to as well, starting when we came into this country, where we were, it was against the law for us to read, right? And if you can't read, you can't know your history, therefore you have no future. So you made very good points in regards to all of those. What I want to do, I want to lean into one of the highlights of Africa, obviously the Nile River, and then I would like for us to do a part two, continuing the conversation with the Nile River next week. I'll make sure make sure it's known that we'll be talking about this, and we'll definitely do it next week. So I want to conclude this part of our discussion with some highlights that you can give, Pop, of the Nile River, and then our next discussion will go more in depth. Where you have your paperwork there next to you. Don't move it. Don't lose it. Because we will be coming back to that the next few days, Pop. So don't lose it. But this gives you more time to look it over, refresh your memory and stuff. But what are the highlights of Africa, in particular the Nile River, that you feel everyone should know?
the Now it is a global curriculum. The curriculum of the 7 liberal arts and sciences came from the Nile River Valley, from the Nile River. Along that Nile, we got 7 temples. Philae, the Temple of Philae, the Temple of Com Omo, the Temple of Edfu, the Temple of Thebes, also Waset, the Grand Temple, the Valley of the Kings, the Temple of Dendera, which is one of my favorite temples, and the Temple of Abydos. Your 7 liberal arts and sciences, the global curriculum now came out of the Nile River Valley. And it came primarily from these particular temples along the Nile. Okay. The building of the pyramids, the building of the temples, the schools, the lodges, and how this Nile River is unique because it is the only river that flows down the Nile River going to the north, that flows from the south to the north. All other rivers on the continent flows from the north to the south. Mm. It is the largest river and the biggest river on the continent. The one that can come close to that will be the Amazon River over in South America. Mm-hmm. But the Nile River is 4,304 feet long. The Nile River itself is longer than the United States is wide.
And to interject real quick on that, it's so interesting how when I was growing up, I knew about the Amazon River. In fact, in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, I knew more about the Amazon River or that it existed than I knew about the Nile River, to an extent, because you gave me Stolen Legacy book when I was 12, 13, and I read that. And it made a profound impact on me. But I don't really remember recalling too much of the Nile River in that book. I know it was there, but it seemed like the Amazon River had more of appeal. I think because there was a game called the Amazon or something like that, and I think I played it, and that's what drew me closer to the Amazon River and interest in it, as opposed to the Nile River. But I just wanted to put that point in there in regards to people growing up. I'm sure a lot of them know about the Amazon River and heard about the Amazon River and, connect to a certain way in Amazon than they do the Nile River. So I just thought that was a very interesting point. But it's just as wide as the United States.
No, the Nile River is longer than the United States is wide. Okay, and on the continent itself, you can put 2 United States on the continent of Africa. Right. That's how big that continent of Africa is.
I didn't know.
And that Nile River, like I say, the curriculum, which is the 7 liberal arts and sciences, right. That is your global curriculum now, because it is taught in all of the countries and all of the continents and all of the school systems. But like I say, the curriculum of the liberal arts and sciences comes out of that Nile River Valley, and it comes from these temples, say like the Temple of Philae, Temple of Com Omo, the Temple of Edfu, the Temple of Waset. The Valley of the Kings is very interesting. And then the Temple of Dendera and the Temple of Abydos. Now,
okay, hold on with that, because we're going to get into the details in part 2. Okay. We're going to get into the details of the temple. I really wanted you to just emphasize why the Nile River is so important, and in Africa, why is it highlighted? The other thing I want to share, based on the point you made earlier, was how people, I didn't know this until just recently, until like a few years ago, that the way the map is drawn, when you buy a local map, they have, it's actually not drawn to scale. whereas the United States is bigger or shows it's bigger than the continent of Africa. And that's not actually accurate. The fact is that Africa, the continent of Africa, is bigger than the United States, so much so that you could fit 2 United States in the continent of Africa. And from what I understand, based on this new research that come out, not only can you fit 2 United States in the continent of, well, you can fit the United States in the continent of Africa along with the other continents as well, into Italy and all that other stuff into Africa. But growing up, the maps that they showed us showed a whole different story. And that also contributes to the psyche or fabrication of, historical reference and how accurate it is, and just across the board, the whole scale. So I just wanted to pinpoint that. So the highlight of Africa would be the Nile River and the several liberal arts and sciences that came from the Nile River, which is taught in all the schools that exist today, or all the schools that exist today got there or received there, or their template came from the several liberal arts and sciences that originated from the Nile River in the continent, in Africa, correct?
Yes, son.
All right. So then you would say that that's a highlight of Africa, and particularly related to the Nile River, correct?
Mm-hmm. One of the highlights.
One of the highlights. Okay. Give us one more highlight, and then we'll conclude and return with a part 2 next week, in the next few days. So what's another highlight of Africa?
In terms of architecture and engineering, Kemet, better known as Africa, you got the pyramids in the north. You got the Nile River. And you got those temples along that Nile River. That's northeast Africa, Kemet. Now in southwest Africa, in Ethiopia, you got this 8-story, I think 6 or 8-story building church built down in the ground of Africa. That's
okay, we're gonna leave it at that because you shared that earlier, in depth, as a matter of fact, which was great. All right, for those who are viewing, thank you so much. I hope you learned some information here. Again, every time I speak to my pop, I'm learning something new. So stay tuned for the next part 2 that we have, where we're going to get into the depths of the Nile River and the sciences, liberal arts and sciences, and Pop will share with us some more details on that. So thank you again for joining. Stay tuned. We'll be bringing more content. I'll be bringing more content to you from Perspective TV. Thank you for your support. You can reach us. You can reach me via my social media handles, Twitter and Instagram, Balagoon Legit. Balagoon Logic, Balogun Logic. And then Facebook, Kaide Bentley, and YouTube through Perspective TV that you're hearing right now. So thanks again. Stay tuned. We're going to get some more content for you. We'll see you later.